What's up, Raider Nation? Jahan and Rashawn back with another episode. I know it's been a while. We apologize. School's been really busy lately for both of us, but we're back. A lot's been going on since we've last come at you with a video. Two pretty bad losses. Wait, actually, do we do a game? Do we do a pod after the Jets game?
No, so our last pod was with Grant and Trey. It was our
Oh
it was
yeah, before the Jets game.
the picks for the Jets and Raiders game, which they were both completely wrong about what was going down that game. We won that game pretty great, but obviously then we knew two tough games. We got swamped with with end of semester, for me at least, end of semester work and presentation week, and it was just a lot going on during Miami and KC. But not much to say about those two games. Miami defensive performance was amazing. We came out, we really showed the world that our defense is, here to stay, and they're a contending defense, in the future, in the near future. Patrick Graham should be going nowhere.
Yeah.
Offense again struggled, stalled out. Bo Hardegree, horrible play calling in the second half. Moving on to KC, I was actually at that game last weekend in Vegas, and again, 14-0 start, started amazing. Conservative call by AP. When you're on 3rd and 11, you get 10 yards, and then on 4th and 1, you kick the field goal, which obviously Daniel Carlson ends up pushing a 33-yard field goal. So not the start we expected. We didn't expect to go up 14-0, that's for sure. But conservative play call, and then the whole script flipped to conservative play calls. The second half was just all, conservative, didn't move the ball. KC got hot, 28 points they scored, or whatever they got on a run. And with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I left because it was over.
Yeah.
So
The thing I'll start with is obviously everyone watching the games will know the core problem that we have right now is our offense is really stagnant. And so Bo Hardegree he's not an offensive coordinator in the NFL. Like, it's clear that his play calling and, like, I don't even know where to start. Like, he'll run the ball on first down, run it on second down, and it's a 3rd and 6, and we have no chance on 3rd and 6, 7. So it just doesn't work. I'll give him a little credit because it's still McDaniel's system. Like, he's not coming in and implementing a whole new system in a matter of 2-3 weeks. So it's still a broken system that we're implementing. So obviously that's the reason, and we'll get into this more down the line. But Antonio Pierce, we're gonna start with him. His in-game decision making has been terrible. The Miami game, going conservative right before the half, and then obviously the 4th and 1, not going for it, and
yeah.
obviously missed the field goal that flipped the game. And then I believe also at the end of the second half in the KC game, he went conservative too, which shows that he has no confidence in the offense. And against Miami and KC, you have to go aggressive. Everyone knows that. So Antonio Pierce has to do a better job if he wants to retain the job. He's got to be better. And
And honestly, I he's not a head coach. I mean, we can't blame him for that. He's not a head coach. He's never, I mean, he coached a high school football team, which is okay. This is not high school. This is the NFL. He did a little bit in college and ASU, and I, it wasn't ever a head coach. And now when he's head coach, he makes the final decisions on all these things that we've seen, all these mistakes. It's the head coach that makes the final decision. And like we saw with McDaniels, when things weren't executed properly, it was, oh, that's the head coach's fault. Here again, you're right. Can't implement a new offensive system in, a week, since they fired him. Going in, since they fired McDaniels, they can't just change the whole system. So Hardegree is calling these old, kind of just remix plays that are just in the playbook. He's gone. He's not going to come back. We know that. I mean, the offense now 13 points, and then this week we scored 17. He's not coming back. That was shades of McDaniel the last 2 weeks. It was like McDaniels was calling the plays in the second half almost. He's not going to come back. Antonio Pierce is a player's coach. Everyone wants to play for him. They all get excited, and he has a chance to drop that interim tag, but they have to do something down the stretch in the last 5 games. Playoffs are unlikely at this point, but it all starts with Antonio Pierce. And if they want to win the next 5 games, which is, they have like a 1% chance of doing that, at KC on Christmas Day on national TV. I mean, that's just an embarrassment waiting to happen in prior years. Even when we had Bisaccia, I remember Yannick Ngakoue and Max Crosby went to
Yeah.
the middle of the field and they were celebrating before the game. And then
Yeah.
first play, touch from scrimmage, Carr hands off Jacobs, fumbles on the first play, and they score a
Yeah.
touchdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just bad luck.
So
So I think it starts with AP, and we gotta get going. We gotta get going now.
and like I agree that AP is motivating the players, and you've seen that in that we've come out fast to open the Miami and the KC game. Like we're up in both those games, but the thing that illuminates itself is this guy is not a head coach is because we can't make adjustments at halftime. Like Miami game, we were I think up or tied. We were in the game. KC we were 14-14, and the second half we just went stagnant, and then the defense kind of let up. But you can't blame them. Obviously, the offense is not scoring. We scored 3 points in the KC game, and the Miami game I think we only scored maybe one field goal in the second half. So you're only putting up one field goal and a half. You can't expect to win. So the coaching is not there. There's no adjustments being made, which is it's concerning. And I've seen a bunch of stuff on Instagram or on Twitter saying, "Oh, the fans are going to revolt if Antonio Pierce isn't the head coach." Or sorry, the players are going to revolt, which is who cares? Like if they're going to revolt, they're not winning games anyway. Like you can't hold your allegiance to a coach who's a 500 coach who can
Yeah.
only beat average teams like the Giants and Jets.
Yeah.
So big picture, you're going to see a lot of fans because the image of McDaniels, who took over for Bisaccia, who led us to the playoffs, it's blinding a lot of people in the fan base right now to say Antonio Pierce is the guy after winning 2 games against the New York teams.
Right. And in the Miami game, it was 14-13 at halftime. And we ended up losing 20-13. So 0 points in the second half. Then when you move to KC, it was the same story. Devontae had no catches in the second half. And it was 21. It was 14-14. It was tie game at halftime. We were tied.
Yeah.
And first drive out of the half, Kansas City just marches 10 plays, 75 yards in 5 minutes. Pacheco runs it in, and it's like 21-14. Offense there comes back. Okay, they had a nice they had a nice drive later in the quarter. They had that nice drive which ended in a Carlson field goal, 21-17. At that point, it was like going into the fourth quarter, like you had to be tied to keep up with KC because they got hot. And KC just ran away with it. I mean, that Rashee Rice touchdown was like the end of it.
Yeah. And like fans, you got to be honest with yourself. Do you really think we can win a Super Bowl with Antonio Pierce? Like, I don't think we can win a Super Bowl with Rich Bisaccia if he was our coach. I don't think he's a Super Bowl winning coach. And like you said, we played the Chiefs twice with him and we got blown out both times. I remember we got outscored like 85-12 or something like that in the combined games.
Yeah.
Something insane like that. So like at least with Gruden, we were winning we beat the Chiefs once and we almost beat him a second time. So with an interim coach, I just don't think it's plausible to say we're going to be a contender. Like we have a good roster. We need a quarterback, obviously, but I don't think a quarterback can make up for the offensive deficiencies that we have in terms of the scheme.
And another thing, the stadium, these pictures behind us, the stadium does not look like that, by the way. Let me just be the first to mention that Sunday was a sea of red. It was a sea of red. Kansas City fans are absolute dicks. I mean, like I was on FaceTime with my dad and I'm showing him the stadium like inside. And I'm like, yeah, look, I'm like, Dad, it's a sea of red up in here. This guy tapped me on the shoulder from behind, this complete, like just, straight from Missouri guy. And he's like, yeah, he's like, sorry, it's all red. And I didn't even say anything to him. I'm just like, what am I gonna say to this guy? Like this guy like doesn't even know where he is right now. And he's tapping me on the shoulder, telling me that, oh, sorry, it's all red. Like, dude, like, second of all, there's no real Raider fans. Like, maybe one or two guys were, including me included, were standing up, on third downs, big plays, getting everyone hyped, like forcing everyone to stand up. Like, come on, get up. Like, there was no one like that. There was like a family sitting next to me who had just bought Raider shirts from the damn like hotel lobby shop. just bought Raider shirts and decided, oh yeah, let's go to the game. Like no one cares in that stadium. There's no fan base in Vegas. It was all away team fans. I mean, it was Kansas City. It was like we were in Kansas City in Arrowhead. They were chanting, oh, and doing the damn tomahawk shit. I mean, it was like it was crazy. I couldn't believe my eyes. And I don't know how the players get motivated to play in a stadium where they're the home team.
Yeah, and you could see it on the broadcast too. Like I was watching from home, and it was all red. They would show Isaiah Pacheco run a touchdown, and it was all red. And that's even worse when you give up a touchdown. You see the red in the stadium. You're like, what? Like God, man, it's pretty bad to witness that. Another thing we wanted to hit too is Hondo Carpenter released the article talking about Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, some of their insights of their relationship. But I'll be the first to say that was a very pro Dave Ziegler article. And that makes me think that Ziegler had something to do with it. He was probably in Hondo's ear. But that just shows you how bad McDaniels was as a head coach. That his former GM is in the media trying to disassociate himself from him.
Yeah.
Um,
it was like Josh McDaniels had the final say. He was hell bent on start. It said hell bent in quotes, hell bent on starting Jimmy Garoppolo when Dave Ziegler supposedly wanted to trade up and draft CJ Stroud. And even on draft day, I remember like the night after it was over, the first round, I remember hearing something like, Raiders desperately tried to trade up to number 2 or number 3 and get CJ Stroud. And I'm like, CJ Stroud was number 2. So I'm like, there's no chance that can be actually like legit, because imagine Dave Ziegler, who we knew, you even mentioned when they both got fired, he never really had a say in anything. Like McDaniels was the one pushing the button. So that's the only reason why I kind of believed it. But Hondo is a McDaniels guy through and through, and probably a Ziegler guy through and through at that. And Ziegler was just dissing McDaniels, honestly.
Yeah, and then the thing is, it doesn't make sense because they already had signed Garoppolo at that point in the draft. So like Ziegler could have said like, we tried to trade up, but there was no chance because they already had a starting quarterback. Like you're not going to sign Garoppolo and then draft Stroud. So there was something that wasn't right in their relationship, and it's clear now. But that's going to lead us to our next point is I don't think you can keep Champ Kelly as GM because this guy is a Dave Ziegler protege. So why keep the guy if your former GM didn't have a say in anything? Like this guy's the assistant to the assistant, and you're promoting him. So I don't really see it how Champ Kelly could be our GM. I just think you got to start fresh with, like, obviously we have our doubts about Antonio Pierce, but that doesn't mean we want to keep Champ Kelly as GM. So I think you got to hire. We've been texting back and forth on some names. Like I think Jim Harbaugh would be fantastic if we could get him. He's won everywhere he's been, 4 for 4 now. And he's been a Raider. He was a QB coach under Rich Gannon. He helped Rich Gannon be MVP in 2002. So Jim Harbaugh would be a name. It's going to be up to Mark Davis. Like there's a lot of options out there, but the fans all want Antonio Pierce. Me and you don't. But is he just going to be swayed by a fan base that has just been really passionate against?
Yeah, that's already ripped him once for not hiring Bisaccia. But honestly, like, you're right. If we hired Bisaccia per se, do you think he would win a Super Bowl? Like, I don't even think he's a special teams coordinator. I don't think he knows like what it takes to be a head coach, at his age and everything. But, Antonio Pierce is a little different, former player, won a Super Bowl with the Giants, beat the undefeated Patriots, knows what it takes to beat that kind of team, knows what it takes to beat the best team. Like, let's say if it came to like playing Philadelphia or something in the Super Bowl, like he would know what it takes, like hypothetically so. But you got to look at it as he's not making the right decisions already. He's making, like we just talked about, he's making dumb, like McDaniels, we used to call bonehead decisions. He's making bonehead decisions too. I mean, that was just not smart football. And even if you've been around the game and everything, I feel like you'd have some sense of like what to do. And even there was one play last week when it was 2nd down and 10, and they threw a slant to Devontae, who got like just right up to like the inch. Like it was like 1 inch away from the first down, and he's throwing a challenge flag.
Yeah.
Like it's 2nd and inch. It'll be 3rd and inches, not 4th and inches. Like, Like, just sneak it. Like, it doesn't matter. Why are you throwing the challenge flag? Clearly his knee was down and they burnt a challenge for no reason.
Yeah. It's pretty bad just the way he calls games, but that's not even my biggest issue. It's just it's more it's both schematically and his game decision making. And like even if we were to promote Antonio Pierce, this is the argument I've heard from pro Antonio Pierce guys is, oh, you just hire coordinators around him, which that's easier said than done because even if you get the best offensive coordinator, if they're really good, they're just going to get some other team's going to elevate them to their head coaching position and you're going to have to restart. So like you're seeing it with, for example, the Bills, they have a defensive head coach. So they're having to recite. They had Brian Dable as their offensive coordinator. He gets hired and now they're in an offensive cycle. They're in a tailspin in terms of their coaching. They have one of the best quarterbacks on the planet and they're 6-6.
And look
Which is
at, but
insane
on
to
the
me.
other side of that, look at Philadelphia. They lost their offensive and defensive coordinators, both of
Yeah.
them. I forgot where the offensive guy, offensive coordinator went to the Colts, right? Shane Steichen.
Shane Steichen Colts and then
Yeah,
the defensive
defensive
coordinator went to
Jonathan
the
Gann. He
went to the
sucks,
Cardinals.
by the way. They
Yeah.
suck. Arizona's just really bad. Even with Kyler Murray back, they're still a horrible team, and that guy doesn't deserve to be a head coach. But you see, they lost both offensive and defensive coordinators, but they still recover. They still recovered. They're 10-1, sitting at 10-1. They just beat Buffalo in a crazy game last weekend. And see, it could go either way with that. Like with that, but you don't want to be in that situation where every year your coordinator, the guy who's calling your offense, just keeps leaving, right? So I don't know if Antonio Pierce is the guy, like all in all. I mean, I would consider bringing in Harbaugh. I mean, we both saw what Harbaugh did with the 49ers and took them to Super Bowl and then NFC Championship game the year after with Kaepernick, who was a decent quarterback, not like a Tom Brady or a Aaron Rodgers or even Roethlisberger at the time. It was like Kaepernick was kind of that new style, mobile running quarterback. And that makes me wonder if you bring Jim Harbaugh in, give him a shit ton of money, you draft, your guy, you draft a quarterback, late, even if we get like a mid-round pick, mid-first round, there's a lot of quarterbacks in the draft this year. There's like Michael Penix is going to be there. And then there's that other guy. I've been hearing names. I mean, Drake May is like decent. Like, I don't think he's like a top 10 pick, maybe, but there's just several other names that are being thrown around. And Caleb Williams is going to go to New England. That's for sure.
Yeah. And where you pick in the first round is irrelevant because we saw last draft the number one pick, Bryce Young. Like, I'd rather have Aiden O'Connell than Bryce Young at this point. So CJ Stroud's the second best quarterback, and in the draft by the draft experts, and he turns out to be this generational talent so far. And we've seen that before. Herbert was a 6th overall pick. You can go on and on. So Mahomes is the 10th overall pick. So like you don't need the first overall pick to get a quarterback. So we're going to be 10, 11 pick. So there's going to be quarterbacks around there. Jaden Daniels.
Oh, Jaden Daniels. That's who I was thinking of. The LSU guy used to be at ASU. Jaden Daniels, he has connections to Antonio Pierce at ASU.
Yeah, so there's going to be quarterbacks available. And there's no free agents available, I don't think, this year, other than Kirk Cousins off of ACL. So like we're going to need to Aiden O'Connell, like we really like him. I like his arm, but I don't think he's a starter. And just he can't move. He's just a statue, and you get one hand on him, he goes down. And the water.
Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think AOC. I think he's a solid backup quarterback. I don't think he wins you anything. Like I think he, if he had to come in mid-game or something, he would win. But I don't see him being the starter next year. I mean, no one really sees him being the starter next year. I mean, they're just gonna number one, get rid of Champ Kelly and hire someone who knows the game, who's been around the game. Even hiring a former player to be your GM is a better option than leaving someone from the McDaniel-Ziegler system. Second of all, offensive coordinator, whatever the guy's name is, Bo Scarborough, Bo Hardigree, whatever his name is, gone. He's gone. Third, head coach, Antonio Pierce, you could keep him, but he hasn't done anything spectacular that says drop the interim tag. So that being said, unless we go 5-0 this year in the next 5 games and make the playoffs, which again, is a very limited, minimal chance. People will say it's impossible. Obviously, we're not going to say that. We're going to say there's a minimal chance of that happening, 1% even. Then he becomes head coach. Obviously, Mark Davis is not going to make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
But in all of this, it really just depends on if Mark Davis is going to use his brain this time. If he's actually going to, come to his senses and hire someone who, who's going to be the guy and not hire a Josh McDaniel situation again, someone who's just been a proven loser all his career. Okay, New England style, whatever they want to call that shit. He's been a loser his whole career as a head coach.
Yeah, and it's yeah, like you said, it's up to Mark Davis, because when you sit in a room with Josh McDaniels and feel that it's okay to hire a guy like that, like, I have major concerns with you as an owner. Like, he did the right thing by firing him. I give him credit for that, but he can't. He's been the owner now for what, 10? When did Al Davis pass? 20.
2011.
So it's been 12 years since he's been owner. I don't know. I don't even know how many head coaches it's been, but it's been a lot, and he's never gotten it right. Kind of got it right with Gruden, but not really, because Mayock was a disaster, and Gruden was picking bad players too. So, like, I was looking at the Niners. They hire the amount of, like, just the amount of, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but they're just so structurally sound as an organization with John Lynch and their
It starts
analytics
at the
department.
top though. It starts with the York family.
Yeah,
It starts with, D Bartolo's nephew or whatever it is.
yeah,
It starts with him. I mean, they're just a winning family. I mean, and Al Davis was a winning family too. Like, Al Davis was a winner. I mean, he won 3 Super Bowls. He dealt with his hardships, and he, made his made his mistakes, and, he let Marcus go, and he just treated him like shit at the end, like, making him play fullback for Bo and shit. And then having, the whole Plunkett situation, like taking Plunkett and benching him like 2 years after they won the Super Bowl, like just benching Plunkett, putting him on the bench. Like, he didn't treat his players the best. Like, that's not a surprise. And one day we gotta have our dads come on the podcast and do a whole,
yeah.
breakdown on that. That would be fun. But you got to look at the owner and Jed York, Bartolo family, the next Bartolo essentially, his sister, Eddie DiBartolo's sister's son is the owner of the 49ers. Starts with him, hired a great GM. John Lynch is a moron, an asshole. We hate John Lynch, but
Done
you
a
got
good job.
he did a good job. He did a good job. And then they hired a good coach. Kyle Shanahan was, again, one of those offensive coordinator guys who became a head coach, just this younger guy. You don't win by hiring a, now even 45, 50-year-old head coach. You got to hire someone in his 30s, who's going to come in and do something new, because the NFL changes every year. That's just how it works. And like, Eagles did a good job of that too. Nick Sirianni, young guy, came in, just turned it around. We still beat them last time we played them, which I
Yeah.
still take pride in.
Shocking that we did that. I don't know how we did that. Looking
Somehow
back.
that was before they were a monster, though. That was before.
But even, like, I agree there that you want young guys, but look at the Chiefs. They have Andy Reid. He's like one of the oldest coaches, and he's good. So, like, that wouldn't prevent me from hiring Harbaugh. Like, even, like, people have said Ben Johnson. I've said that too. But is it really, like, what are you gonna do with Ben Johnson as your head coach? Like, it's just gonna be more of the same bullshit of us going like 7-10. Like, I don't see him innovating the system and just being Kyle Shanahan or McVay. Like, I think you got to go for a proven guy. And we don't have the structure in our organization. Like, Mark Davis runs our organization. He's not a visionary. He's just, it's just not, that's not his role. So you got to hire a guy. He tried to do that with Gruden. I give him credit to just run the organization, but Gruden is not the guy to do that. Um, Gruden was too impulsive. He was a great coach, but he couldn't run your organization. So, like, hiring Jim Harbaugh to run your organization seems better to me, because he's done it everywhere he's been. Stanford, Michigan, San Fran. It's just all worked for him.
Yeah.
So I really want Jim Harbaugh. If we can't get him, of course you can go the coordinator route with a guy like Ben Johnson.
Press
The
Taylor.
Yeah, Press Taylor. The Texans OC is, I forgot his name. No, he's a Kyle Shanahan guy. Bobby Slowick. That's what I'm thinking of. So,
Yeah.
like, there's guys like that who you can hire, but I really want Jim Harbaugh. I think that's what gives us the best chance to win with the roster that we have now. But I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens these next 5 weeks, because is it going to be more of the same, or are we going to be fighting like we want to see? We want to see our guys fight at the end of the
Like
day.
we did. You remember we were in the same exact situation in 2021. It's actually scary how, how similar the situations are. We were the exact same and we had to win 5 in a row. And
Yeah.
we did that. We won 5 games in a row. I believe it was five
Oh,
games.
I think it might have been four. We were
4 or 5. Yeah, yeah. Okay. It might have been 4. You're
we were
right.
6-7, and then we won 4 in a row to go 10-7.
Yeah,
But
yeah. We were 6 and 7. This year we're 5 and 7. That's correct. But it doesn't matter. It's still, it's a very similar situation. And I think that if they can just get the right offense called, the defense, first of all, Patrick Graham should go nowhere. Patrick
yeah,
Graham should be the defensive coordinator of the future for the Raiders. I mean, Patrick Graham, as much as we've hated on him in the past, I mean, that Ivy League guy, he really came through, and our defense plays hard and they play tough. Another thing, get rid of Tyree Wilson right now, please. Trade him off season. As soon as the season ends, just cut him. Who gives a F what the dead cap is? Cut Tyree Wilson, cut Jimmy Garoppolo, just cut ties with all these McDaniels, Ziegler guys. Yeah, just cut those guys. So yeah, we won 4 games in a row to end the season. We were at Cleveland, then versus Denver, at Indy, and versus the Chargers, which was the greatest Raider game I've ever seen in my life.
yeah. So I mean, the thing I would push back on you a little bit is we had Gruden's system that year. Like we had a good offensive scheme. This year we don't have shit on offense.
Yeah.
Like at least we were moving the ball with. Obviously, we lost Ruggs, but our offense was really scary at that point with Ruggs. That's when we blew out the Eagles. I remember. So we don't have that this year. Like we have the players, but our scheme is just not there. It's not installed. Like, I remember Ole was calling plays. The oldest offensive coordinator in the NFL was dialing up some plays, but I just don't think it's gonna.
Yeah.
I really hope it happens. I hope we beat Minnesota. And who do we play after Minnesota? We played Chargers on Thursday night.
Yeah, Chargers on Thursday night. And
So
then
it'd be nice if we won 2 of those games. They're both at home. We have a chance to win both those games.
you remember when Bisaccia was the coach? He used to come on the podium after the game. Yeah, guys, and we'll tell Gus and Ole. We'll tell Gus and Ole, and they'll make the proper adjustments. And Gus and Ole will come out and make the right adjustments. And
Where's Ole now? I don't even know where. Does he have a job?
No, Ole's out of the NFL for sure. I know Gus is Indianapolis defensive coordinator, and that's another story. But they've won 3 in a row, though. Colts have won 3 games in a row. They held them to
them too. I remember. I think we'll beat them. They beat us last week.
Their defense is playing good too. They held to 13 points, 6 points, and 20 points. And
I don't even know who they play though. They play pretty shit teams.
Yeah, 3 shit.
Looking up, it's like Colts versus like Colts Titans every week. Like
it was Carolina, New England, and Tampa.
Yeah, they're just playing shit teams. Like
that was 3 shit teams. They actually got a chance to make the playoffs. They're sitting at 6-5. They're in good shape because they play Tennessee now this week, and then Cincinnati, and then Pittsburgh, then Atlanta, then us, then Houston. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But for us though, starts with Minnesota. Josh Dobbs, that's like the first task, pressure him. Mahomes was not pressured much at all last game. Like, we got a couple sacks, but it was like really late. Like, there was early, there was no pressure. The corners did a good job of locking down, and they contained in the first half. That's why we went up 14-0 in the first place, was because the defense kept holding. Like, they kept holding over and over, and then obviously they got tired because the offense just going 3 and out. And that falls on Bo Ardigre's shoulders. That's his fault. That's his fault essentially. But we'll see how he bounce back. I mean, this was kind of talking about the future today, and because we're not expecting to make the playoffs again, but we'll see what happens. But if I had to give my future picks, I'd say I want Jim Harbaugh for sure. I think last time around Harbaugh was presented himself, and I heard he was intrigued or something, and this loser owner went with, a guy who hasn't won shit as a head coach. So Jim Harbaugh, and then getting a good GM, to complement him would be nice. And And Harbaugh, I don't know. Harbaugh doesn't call the plays. I don't think they would need to get a good OC too.
I feel like he has enough connections in the NFL to grab a guy. I don't know if he did in San Francisco or not. I feel like he did. He's an offensive minded coach. Like he was a former quarterback, former
Yeah.
player. So
Yeah, for sure. But
it's gonna be interesting.
It was Greg Roman. Greg Roman was their offensive coordinator those 3 years. When
It was
they
Greg, who's their DC? They had Fangio in San Fran. I think it was Fangio and Greg Roman. So they had a great
uh
staff in San Francisco.
no, I think it was it was Vic Fangio. Damn,
Fangio,
I didn't even know that. That was Vic Fangio.
yeah,
He
they had a great staff.
sucks.
No, as a DC, he's good. He's Miami's DC now. They beat us bad in defense.
That's true. You know, he sits in the box.
But
Damn, that's wild. But Jim
yeah,
Harbaugh,
it's gonna be a wild ride though. Like Raider Nation, don't root for a tank job. Like we should still root for the team to win. We've seen it in the past. Like it doesn't matter where you pick in the first round. You can always get a quarterback. So we want this team to win. We want it to be competitive. We're rooting for the playoffs. We're rooting for our current head coach, but we're gonna see.
by the
We're
way,
giving
5-13, 5-13, or 5-12 won't get you a first round #1 overall pick. So if that's what you're thinking, tank job is not the way to do it. We got to beat Minnesota. We got to beat the Chargers, win 2 games, then see where we're sitting going to Kansas City, which is going to be the toughest game left. But also Denver's playing pretty good too. So I mean, we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah. All right, Raider Nation. Thank you.
We'll see y'all later.